Bob White was attending these conferences. It was way back. I think it was in the early 90s.
1996 was his first conference down here.
And he came here, and he came in, and he said, I've got something out in the truck you've got to see, but I can't get anyone to come out and look at it. And he said, doesn't that sound familiar? They all was thinking it was a fake, and they wouldn't even go look at it. I said, I'll go. But he's saying it's something that he found that fell off of a UFO. So everybody was saying, he didn't even want to go look at it. So I went out to see it. And I know it was real, because after that, in fact, Linda, are you still here? She leave? Linda? You remember I came back in and got you. And I said, come out here to the truck, you got to see this thing. And you broke a little piece off of it. And I never knew what happened to that little piece.
I think that we found that it had a lot of aluminum in it, not like the business magnet.
I can't hear you from here. But anyway, we went out there and we talked to the man, and I really believed him. He was sincere because he wanted somebody to at least see this. He spent years trying to get anybody to be interested. He took it to Los Alamos. They wanted to keep it, naturally. He knew if he let them have it, he would never see it again.
Yeah.
And Larry Cekander is his old friend through all of this.
Yeah.
He was taking it everywhere, and then began taking it to all.
We took it across the country. We went to Los Alamos, New Mexico Tech, and did tests on it. Delta State, Missouri, MSU, University of Illinois, and many more.
Microphone.
I can hear it okay up here. You can't hear it?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, it's been to Los Alamos. It went to National Institute for Discovery Science, did some tests on it in 97. Los Alamos called it an unknown object, unknown origin, 19 times in their report. The most prestigious scientific research group in the country don't know what it is. What's our poor, meager people supposed to do?
Well, he told me at the one, I think it was Los Alamos, or one of them said, oh, you probably made it in your garage.
Yeah.
I said, oh, yeah.
Well, we got a test that says it wasn't made in any garage.
But they thought, they wanted to take it and keep it and do experiments on it. The only thing they did do was cut that tip off.
They cut the large end, Los Alamos, and they kept a slice. It was out of Bob's sight for about an hour. They gave him a tour of the place. And in the time it was out of his sight, they managed to take about an 1/8-inch slice that they kept. And I could prove that when I cut the end does not match the top half to the bottom half. There's about an 1/8-inch gap. So where did that go?
But that's the only thing he would let them do was cut that much off of it. He wasn't going to give the whole thing to them. But now I wanted Bob White to come, and I'd lost track of him. He was in touch with me for many, many years. He wanted me to publish his book about how it happened, but the book wasn't very thick. It wasn't a real book. So I said, you make it bigger, and I'll do it. And he never got back with me. So I've known him for all this time. I know what he was saying was real. I've learned in all of these years how to tell the fakes. You do enough of these conferences, you can tell the ones that are phonies. But this is real case. But Bob died. I was trying to find him. I said, I want him to come on the show, the conference. Was it just this last year?
Yeah, it was last year. I'm driving down the road, and is this Bob White? It was you on the phone. I says, no. I says, it'll be a long-distance phone call. You know,
I
'cause
finally found Larry. I thought I got trying to locate him. But I did see Bob White finally on the History Channel last year, and I said, finally somebody is listening to you, Bob. But it took a while to find a way to contact you.
Right.
And then you said you have the object now, and
Yes.
you promised Bob you would continue
That's right.
trying to get this known to the public.
Absolutely.
Okay,
That was the deal. Bob and I were very, very close. We were like brothers. Traveled the country together. When you ride a 42-foot bus across the country, you get pretty close, you know. And we had some fun. We enjoyed it until his health. He just couldn't do it anymore. In the meantime, we'd had a scientist in MSU. We snuck in the back door, and we got an X-ray diffraction test done on the piece of the metal. And the guy that did the test, I have this on movie. I was taking it video, and you see him leaning over closer to the computer screen. And then he gets the supervisor of the shop there, or the university. He says, "What is that?" And you see this jump on the screen, and then there's a big long taper, and then it goes into your normal readings. And what was found was an amorphous peak. Now what that is a polycrystalline structure that's not normally used in any kind of metal.
I'm going to let you take it.
Okay.
But anyway, when Bob died, it was mysterious circumstances.
Yeah, that too.
So let's let Larry take over. He wants to carry on Bob White's legacy.
Hello. Okay, still working. Okay, as I was saying, the scientists found this amorphous peak in the reading. Now, this man is a specialist in metallurgy, master's degree, worked for Boeing Aircraft. He knows his stuff. They cannot find a match to this anywhere on our planet. Now, in 1985, when this piece was recovered, the technology was not even available to do this. In 1988 is the soonest that you'll see anything called amorphous peak, but not in aluminum. In 1990, it's the first time that you see this amorphous peak again, and then it's in aluminum. I'm going to play the DVD I made of Bob. Let Bob tell you his story, and then see some of the scientists. And then at the end of the presentation, I'll take questions and answers. So I guess we'll take off with the DVD. I think we'll take off the DVD. There's a little lag time before this starts. There it is. And we had a little fun with this too. This is Bob singing his song.
Driving down the road one dark started night. I saw this thing just sitting there and it was really bright. I stopped the car and stepped outside and much to my surprise, ooh, I discovered it right before my eyes. Ooh, I discovered it right before my eyes. I picked it up, looked at it, and thought this can't be real. I took it to Los Alamos and let them have a feel. They said they knew just what it was and then they changed their minds. Oh, get out of here with it, or you're in a bind. Oh, get out of here with it, or you're in a bind. I packed it up, took it home, and then I called the press. They said, where did you get this thing? You might as well confess. I told them everything I saw. I pulled out all the stops. Oh, get out of here with it before we call the cops. Oh, get out of here with it before we call the cops. I passed you lie detector tests. This object is for real, but anyone can pass these tests, and that's the way they feel. I let the object speak for me. Just open up the case. Ooh, you'll discover it. It came from outer space. Ooh, you'll discover it. It came from outer space. It came from this is the real thing.
I'm not a skeptic any longer.
It's like the best mystery story you've ever read.
And I know the truth.
This perhaps is the one of the most unusual UFO stories that...
I have to believe what I saw.
We're just going to keep pushing. And sooner or later, we're going to push over the apple cart.
How many other people have a piece of a UFO? I was on my way to Las Vegas with a young lady in her car. She was driving. I was asleep, and she woke me. I was taking a nap. It was around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and we were between Grand Junction, Colorado, and Cisco, Utah, on the old Highway 6. That was before the superhighway went through. So we were driving when she woke me up and asked me what this strange light was in front of us, and there was a railroad track on the right-hand side of us, and I just assumed it was a railroad light. That's what it looked like at the distance that we were from it. And I told her so, and I went back to sleep. Well, it must have been doing some pretty strange things that I didn't see. When I saw it, it was stationary, so high off the ground. She woke me a little while later, and she said, "This is not a railroad light." And I looked at it, and of course, I realized that she was right, because now it's about the size of a full harvest moon. And that's at arm's length. So I decided to stay awake and watch it. And as we kept driving, we got closer to it, the larger it became. And I realized then that this thing was enormous. So I decided that we would turn it was a very late at night, or early in the morning, like 2 or 3 o'clock. So I reached over and shut the headlights off, and we drove that way for a while. We got closer to it, and I shut the ignition off, and we started coasting. And the closer we got, the larger this became. And we rounded a curve in the highway to the right, and I noticed that the light then was no longer on the right-hand side of the road, but on the left-hand side. And we got within a few hundred feet of it, and I had her stop the car. She was terrified. She didn't want to stop the car. I got out of the car on the passenger side, stepped in front of the car to look at it. This thing was about the size of a 3-story building. It was so bright that I couldn't see if there was any solid object in it or not. All I saw was this round light. And I held my hands up in front of my face like this in order to get a better look at it so I could shield my eyes from it. But I couldn't tell if there was anything solid in it or not. All I could see was the light. And as I was standing there in front of the car looking at it, I guess that she was so nervous, so terrified that she turned the headlights on. And when she did, the thing just shot straight up in the air like that fast. And then it connected with another light. When it got up in the sky, about looked like 2 blue neon tubular lights, one on top of the other, with a space in the middle. And this thing connected to the end of it, or it hit the end of it, and I noticed it kind of lit up a little bit, like perhaps there was an explosion or something. I didn't hear any noise, and it was quite a distance. Now, this other object propelled out of it, right back down to where I was standing. Had it fallen straight down, I'd have never found it. It would have been miles from me. But there was a little embankment, and it hit on the other side of this embankment. And I said, I'm going to find out what that was. So I climbed up the embankment, and I saw the groove in the hillside, and it had just kind of straightened out like that. And I followed the groove to the end, and there this object lay. Now, I don't know what size it was when it started out, But I know when I picked it up, or when I got to it, I didn't pick it up right away because it was still glowing. And I went back to the car. I took the keys from the ignition. So I opened the trunk of the car to find something to pick this up with, and there was one brown cotton glove in the trunk of the car. Went back to the object, followed the groove in the ground till I got to the object. It was no longer glowing. And then I run the back of my hand over it, and I didn't feel any heat. So I dropped the glove on top of this object, pick it up, in case it was hot. I could let go of it real quick, and it wasn't. I picked it up, took it back to the car. She was still sitting on the passenger side, and she was crying. And I put it in the trunk of the car, wrapped in the glove, and went in and got in the driver's side and said, "I'll drive." Well, I knew I had to anyway. She was too nervous. So I drove, and we was looking for a place to get a drink or a cup of coffee or something. Actually, a drink is what I was looking for. So we came to an all-night diner. We went inside and sat down at the counter, and there was about maybe 4 or 5 stools at the counter and 2 tables. Now, that's as big as the place was. And there was a gasoline pump outside and an old phone booth. And the phone booth was green, I remember that. And we sat down at the counter and had some coffee. And there was the 2 tables back and back, and each table had 2 chairs. And at one table was a couple of prospectors. And they overheard us talking about the experience we just had. And one of them came up to me and he said, "You folks saw something out there tonight, didn't you?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "We saw some lights." He said, "Did you report them?" And I said, "Well, no. Why would I report them, and who would I report them to?" He said, "Well, we see them here all the time, every night." And he said, "We report them," and he said, "They don't believe us and they won't investigate. Maybe coming from a couple of outsiders, someone that doesn't live here," he said, "they might investigate if you were to tell them." I said, "I don't know who to call." And he wrote down a phone number and handed it to me. He said, "Call these people." And he said, "I'd appreciate it if you did." So when we left the restaurant, the little green phone booth that was right outside, I made the phone call. And I remember it was a local call. So there must have been a air base nearby or something. And they said they hadn't seen anything on radar, and that what I had seen was probably the reflections of some lights, swamp gas or balloons, or anyway, they blew me off. And that was the end of it. And I said, "That's fine. I can put this out of my mind and pursue my career now without feeling guilt as though I have some part of a government secret project." That was my impression, that it was a secret project that the government was working on. I had I hadn't entertained any ideas of it being extraterrestrial until I was told later by a scientist at Los Alamos that it was extraterrestrial. And he told me this over the phone, but he later denied he said it. I have an object here that is, to say the least, extremely unusual. The fact that it's 80% aluminum and that it has over 30 different rare earth elements in it. How they put together, we don't know. We know that it has the hardness and the grain structure of steel. And I don't believe we have anything here on Earth like that. How many other people have a piece of a UFO and are willing to back it up with a sworn affidavit and a polygraph test and 7 analyses?
To give you the best example of it is if somebody comes out of a closet and they scare you, you get that adrenaline rush for a second. That's your fight or flight response kicking in. That's what the polygraph kind of deals with. if I have a guy who robbed a bank down in Grand Junction, let's say on Main Street on Friday, and I bring him in and I say, hey, did you rob the Wells Fargo bank on Friday with a gun? Let's say he did it, and he tells me let's say he lies and said I didn't do it, but he really did. Yeah. And what he has to fear is me detecting him of lying, because he can go to prison, all that kind of thing. Yeah. What it would be in your case would be embarrassment that you weren't telling the truth. Right. So that would be the jeopardy there, and that triggers off a fight or flight response. When you lie, it's a fear of being detected of lying. So it's simply that. That's how the polygraph works, and we measure the heart rate, your sweat activity, and your breathing.
Okay. The amazing thing is that you could take any of a great number of witnesses that I've talked to, and you could take those people into a courtroom, and they could send a man to the electric chair based on their testimony. And yet that same witness could claim a UFO sighting, and it would be ridiculed. See, there is an incredible set of double standards. And yeah, we can believe them and send a guy to the chair, but we can't believe them on these terms. So it's a pretty incredible situation to have to deal with.
So you guys are traveling, and it was old Highway 6, right, at that time? Out by, so you're going, so you know pretty much you're in between Grand Junction and Cisco. Right. Okay. So you guys are driving along, as I take it, as I remember, you're asleep in the vehicle? Okay. She awakens you and says, hey, there's a bright light or something? Yeah. Or what did she say?
She asked me, what's that bright light up ahead?
Okay.
And there was a railroad track on the right-hand side. I knew that.
Okay.
And I said, I looked at it, it was about the size of a railroad light, bright red. I said,
okay.
Looks like a railroad light.
Okay.
In my work, I do microsections of printed circuit boards. I use a microscope. I'm familiar with this type of technique. That's what we do all the time, looking for foreign objects in printed circuit boards. Bob has had his object studied by laboratories, including the Los Alamos National Laboratory. The magnifications that he has had his object magnified to is what I work with every day. And I'm familiar with these type of things, and I can tell that these are legitimate microphotographs. The analyses that have been done are legitimate. His lie detector tests are legitimate. So he has quite a story that has been confirmed by laboratories and by his lie detector tests.
Yeah, after I did some research on this, I mean, I think your story's obviously genuine.
And it's so far-fetched, you know? I mean,
to me, it's not. It's not that far-fetched, because the way I look at this, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, is the way after I went through your statement and looked at this thing, you got an object from something. Yes. What that something was, you don't know, I don't know. It's unidentified. It could be government, it could be extraterrestrial.
Exactly.
But what we're here to confirm is your story happened.
Yes.
The way you got it, and that's the way you got it.
But then people don't look at it like that.
Right. Well, people can't be that closed-minded.
They are. Believe me, they are.
Oh, I know they are. I deal with that every day.
The only thing that I said was, here's what happened to me, and here's what I have. You decide what it is. Even the people at Los Alamos and the people at National Institute for Discovery Science, I went to them, and I didn't say a thing to them about it being extraterrestrial or anything, but they called me, and they said, sorry to disappoint you, but it's not extraterrestrial. I never said it was.
Right, exactly.
And I said, I'm not disappointed.
You're just saying you're truthful about how it happened, that's all. Exactly.
That's all I'm interested in, is the truth. I want to find out what this is. If they tell me that, when I first went to Los Alamos, had they said, yeah, it's a government project, a secret. Like I say, I'm as patriotic as the next guy. I would have said, keep it. I won't say anything to anybody about it. But they lied to me, and then they tried to make it appear as though I lied. And that got my dander up, my fighting spirit.
I had agreed to go with Unsolved Mysteries. And they suggested that I have another analysis, and I said, fine. Because they said, well, Los Alamos can do the proper tests on it, and you should send it to them. And I said, no, I'm not sending it anywhere. And they said, well, cut a piece off. And I said, no, I have already cut it, and I'm not going to cut it anymore. They said, well, would you be willing to take the piece there? And I said, well, you know, I would, except that I was always under the impression that Los Alamos is government funded, and I don't want anything to do with the government because I'm afraid that they'll confiscate the object and I'll never see it again. And he said, well, this particular department is not government funded. He said, it's funded by the University of California. And he said, not only that, but the person who will be in charge of the analysis, the name is Paul Dunn. And he is the brother to one of the producers of Unsolved Mysteries. I flew there to Albuquerque, and they had a car waiting for me, and I drove to Los Alamos, and I stayed at the Hilltop Inn, in case anyone wants to check. Paul Dunn picked me up the next day, and we went down to to Los Alamos, and we into the parking lot. We walked through the gate, and there was a guard shack at the gate, and there were several armed guards. And I was told to stand behind the white line, wide white line, and it also said deadly force would be used. So I stood behind the white line and went inside the guard shack, and they got a badge for me and put it on me. We went inside the facilities. As we got inside, Paul said, "Wait here a moment." I stood there, and he went inside, and then I heard this announcement come over to the loudspeaker. It said, "Visitor on premises, take necessary precautions." When he came out, I said, "Was that for my benefit?" He said, "Certainly was." He said, "We don't get many visitors here." So we went into the facility there, to the laboratory, and I was introduced to a Dr. Robert Reiswick. Now, Dr. Reiswick was the one that was supposed to do the analysis on this. Dr. Reiswick is a scientist who is retired from Los Alamos, but they call him in on, they call him in on special occasions. And he works part-time, and this, my unknown object, was considered something special. They called several scientists and several people that worked there into the laboratory where I was showing the object. And there were several of them there. Now, there were a lot of them that held it, and there were some that wouldn't touch it. And I said, "Well, go ahead and touch it. I've had it for all these years, and I don't glow in the dark." But they were still a little afraid. They showed me around the facilities, and then they told me they would have to cut the object. I didn't want to do that anymore because I thought it would ruin the looks of it. But they said the machine, the equipment that they had to analyze the object with wasn't capable of handling an object this large. And they would like to have a piece taken off of the large end. And I said, if that's the only way we can do it, I came all the way out here, I don't want to go home empty-handed, let's do it. Now, my impression was that they could do this in one day. And I don't know why I believed them, but I did. But they kept the object, they put it in a saw, they cut it. And when they were cutting it, Paul told me, he said, "This is going to take some time to cut through the large end of this. While they're cutting it, we'll show you around the facilities and show you what we're going to do." This was the first time the object was out of my sight. When it came back, the object had already been cut. And there was also a person there, John Bass, from Public Relations. And he had a camcorder, a professional camcorder, one of these large ones on his shoulder. And he asked me to hold the object and turn it certain ways, which I did. And then he said he needed to see the object being cut. So they reenacted the cutting of the object. And this becomes very important. They reenacted the cutting of the object, and there was a video made, and I wasn't supposed to get a copy of it, but I did. Now, I talked to Dr. Reiswick after I had come back home, and I hadn't heard anything from Los Alamos. So I called, and I talked to Dr. Reiswick, and Dr. Reiswick, and this was on October the 16th, and Dr. Reiswick told me over the telephone that this object was definitely extraterrestrial. And I put that in my sworn statement, And I passed a lie detector test to that fact. And then Dr. Reiswick, I asked him if he would repeat that so my wife could hear it. And he repeated it, and she heard him say it. And then he asked me if I would send him the small in pieces that was returned to me by New Mexico Tech. Well, at that point, I said yes. At that point, I'd have sent him anything he wanted. This is the Federal Express receipt, and here's the trace number up here, in case anyone wanted to write that down and check on me, where I sent it to Dr. Reiswick. These are the small in pieces that I sent him. Now, after he got the small in pieces, I talked to Dr. Stanton Friedman a while later, just as a matter of fact, just a few months ago, and he said, well, I've already checked you out. He said, I talked to Dr. Reiswick, and he said he didn't say that. Well, Dr. Reiswick said he didn't say a lot of things, which he did say, and which I am able to prove that he said, because I have them on tape now. When I found out all these people were telling me stories, I started taping all my telephone conversations.
We started off coming to Laughlin because the largest UFO conference in the United States is at the Flamingo. We thought that this would be an excellent opportunity to have a press conference and to share our experience, my experience, and share the object that we have with the world. Unfortunately, due to a series of events, it didn't work out the way we had planned. It was closed. Well, have something in the safe and it can't get it out, it won't work. No, the numbers don't light up. Thank you. And we had the object in a safe. Now, whether or not the object caused the batteries to go dead, in the safe is a mystery. Wait a minute. I didn't try my whacking.
The farther we go into this, the more strange it gets. The little things that you don't think about to start with. 5 years ago, all of a sudden, it's continuously happening, one after the other.
That's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Just another day in the life of Bob White. Nobody's going to believe this. Well, it's just a malfunction, I suppose. But it doesn't even light up.
No. Got a feeling it's really dead.
Oh boy.
It says safe unlocked, but it's not.
Too many coincidences. It's been that way ever since I recovered this thing.
You get that battery had enough juice in it yesterday to open that safe.
It was working fine, so I got it in there. But I don't want to make anything of this until we're absolutely certain.
Right.
The purpose of the press conference was to show the world that we have had extraterrestrial visitation to this planet, that there's some other power out there, besides us, with super intelligence. And I believe that the reason our government is covering up the fact that there are UFOs is because we are the most powerful nation in the world, and yet we cannot control our skies. We notified numerous media agencies, and U2 and one other from the Mojave Daily News are the only ones that showed up. The only ones that seem to be interested in the truth. And I want to give it to the world, but it don't look like they want it. They don't want to know. They say they want to know, but they don't.
And meanwhile, Bob White says he knows where his object came from. He wants to know what it is. You may remember late last year we aired a report on White's Museum of the Unexplained in Reed Spring. The centerpiece of the museum is an object White says was blown off of an extraterrestrial or possibly an experimental government aircraft. In the 1980s, White and a friend were driving in Colorado at night when they saw bright lights over the highway. The UFO emitted a small flash of light and took off. White says the light was the object which he recovered. White has passed a polygraph test on his story. Here's the most recent story on the object. The object, over 80% aluminum with rare trace elements and the strength of steel. Bob White found the object. Robert Gibbons, scientist, historian, former aircraft engineer, and director of the Museum of the Unexplained. Dr. Gilbert Jordan, physicist, worked on space and top-secret military weapons projects. Years ago was shown an object recovered by the military he says appeared very similar to this one.
Well, have something in the safe and it can't get it out, it won't work.
In February, the three took White's object to the International UFO Congress in Laughlin, Nevada, and checked into a suite at Harrah's Hotel. Immediately, magnetic door keys to the rooms did not work, and the three had to keep getting new door key cards. The object was placed in a digital room safe, and the next day, with media in the room waiting to see and photograph it.
I tried the safe 3 times, it worked properly. I placed the object in the safe overnight. When they tried to get it open with a digital computer that they had that they plugged in, it said the safe was open, but it wouldn't open. So they had to drill it.
One of the batteries was found cracked and leaking. Happenstance, you might say, except it happened twice more when the object was placed inside the safe. And hotel personnel had to be called to crack it each time.
We never suspected this until this thing happened at Laughlin with the lock situation. Needle moves, and basically there's a different amount of radiation given off from the object.
Some type of emission, perhaps in the X-ray or gamma ray range.
We're trying to see what would have caused this film to be exposed. There's no question that the film has been exposed in some manner.
Another test. The object was placed on unexposed dental X-ray film for 36 hours. There was exposure, apparently, from the object.
Is it theirs? Is it ours? This could have been one of ours. Now we have actually the object doing something. We've got to find out what it's doing, what it is, you know.
And the classified object, Dr. Jordan says he was shown years ago by military officials similar to this one.
I said, do you know what this is composed of? They told me that it was primarily aluminum with some silicon, a little bit of iron, nickel, and some, calcium thrown in some trace materials. I asked, I said, is it radioactive or anything? They said, well, we can't tell you that.
I have something here that belongs to the world. This is something I think everyone should know. Extraterrestrial, or is this something that came from this planet, something that our government is working on? I believe we have a right to know that.
From another world.
Oh, I see. I was going to ask, why would our government not want us to know about it?
Well, that's been an argument, you know, for years among those who say the government continually has tried to cover these kind of things up.
Well, this is something that's not going to go away. We'll be hearing more about it.
We will keep our eye on the object, and if anything else develops, we'll certainly let you know if you want to know.
Because the truth is out there, right?
Well, he's changed the disc. Some of the high points as far as the directed exposure from the object. A normal X-ray spreads out. It doesn't direct or send a coherent beam that was done to the X-rays. The other thing, that, like I said, I mentioned before, the amorphous peak is unknown in 1985 in any aluminum manufactured. We have testing that has been done that has identified cosmic radiation bombardment. You can only get that. You can only get the fast neutron radiation from a nuclear reactor or from outside Earth's atmosphere from cosmic radiation. Airplanes that travel at 40,000 feet in the air pick up cosmic radiation, and they become radioactive as they fly. They have to be decommissioned sooner or later because it's not safe for people to fly in them. Now, if it's a manufactured object, all the tests say it is. It's an alloy aluminum. It's not cast. It's free-formed. And it's been in a vacuum because it has elongated spirals, which is the silicone being more than 5 microns in length. That's a sign it's been in space. It was formed in space. Again, you have to have gravity to sit there to do that in an aluminum alloy. Go ahead and we'll start this here, and you hear some scientists talk about it.
When it went up in the sky, there was something I had never seen before, and I had the feeling it was not of this world. I had contact to go to Los Alamos, and there I met who is the top metallurgist, and Dr. who they called in on special occasions, and he was really excited about this because he'd never seen anything like it before. He said to me, this is something that I've been looking for all my life. He said, this is definitely extraterrestrial. From Los Alamos, they said they did the analysis on silicon. I called Dr. and I asked him about it. He said, aluminum. And I'm saying, why does he keep talking about aluminum? The report says you did it on silicon. He said, well, we'll have to talk to did it. So I called and said, isotopes? No, we didn't do any isotope tests at all.
Although Los Alamos was supposed to do this isotopic ratio abundance test, they denied that they did.
So were you getting the feeling that all these scientists that were doing the analysis were lying to you?
Absolutely lying to me.
My initial impression of the object was that it was extremely extraordinary. It was something like which I'd never seen before.
Chris Ellis is a solid-state physicist with an expertise focusing on aluminum alloys and semiconductors.
After poring over the data, we found that the object is an aluminum alloy of unknown origin. This is not anything like we've seen before. There are some very unusual metals in this object that you typically do not find in other alloys.
What's the chance that these elements would end up in this alloy either naturally or accidentally?
I'd have to say pretty much zero.
So this is absolutely a manufactured object.
Looking at a detailed list of all the metals and all the elements that can be found in this object, it's conclusive that they're there by purpose. We're looking at something much more advanced than what we're currently familiar with today.
We are in Kimberling City, Missouri, investigating the Bob White story. In 1985, after seeing multiple UFOs, an object is either ejected or shot down towards the ground. Through scrupulous scientific analysis, no one can say what this piece actually is. We are now sitting down with 2 scientists who are brave enough to come out and speak to us. And even though the institutions they're affiliated with requested to remain anonymous, we are uncovering new clues that are being discovered about Bob White's object.
I did 2 types of tests. The first test I did was X-ray diffraction analysis.
David Lamb is a research scientist currently at a major university in the U.S. His expertise is in physics and material science, and he spent the past year researching the Bob White object.
What's very unique about this is we have what's called an amorphous peak here. And that amorphous peak tells me that this is a polycrystalline semiconductor.
What's the significance of that? I mean, how anomalous is that?
You don't find that in aircraft aluminum.
Where do you find it?
I'm not aware you find it anywhere. Another thing that's very unusual in this is it has silver in it, and a very high percentage of silver, about 4.3% silver. silver is only used in aluminum at the experimental stage of superconductivity. If you spray the surface of aluminum with silver, then you enhance superconductivity. Let's say you fire a bullet through a magnetic field, well, it's going to have experienced drag. But what if that bullet was able to superconduct? It would expel the magnetic field, and that bullet would not slow down. It would not experience any kind of drag. So, if this was something traveling through space and it was going through, let's say, Jupiter's powerful magnetic field, it could theoretically expel that magnetic field and zip past Jupiter without experiencing those forces.
Now, with superconductivity, is that difficult to achieve?
Space is the perfect environment for superconductivity. You have to expend no energy to get objects to be superconductive in space.
So if an object were fabricated to travel in space on its own, this would be the kind of object it would be.
Yes. You're going to get the biggest bang for your buck out of the native properties of this object in space.
What do all these things have in common? These objects have unique qualities that might point to an extraterrestrial origin. I think the evidence is absolutely overwhelming, going all the way back to the 1930s, running right through for 70 years. There's a collection of trace evidence that is astounding. The problem is it's absolutely proving without a shadow of a doubt that that trace evidence is causally connected to the high strangeness that people experience. I think the wall between what we have now and where we want to be for absolute proof is tissue paper thin. We must keep going. The answer's on the other side of that wall. We've invested, after hearing the cases in Poland of this vitrified soil possibly connected to these unidentified holes, we think they might be testing us, but for what reason, we don't know. Then we hear the story of Bob White and actually hold the object in our hands, and we read the reports from top-level institutions that can identify it. It's fantastic, and as time passes, further scientific testing may one day prove that it's of extraterrestrial origin. We just received a phone call from David Lamb. After conducting additional scientific testing, he now theorizes that Bob White's object is a quasi-crystal of a very complex structure. This type of structure is considered to be the cutting edge of nanotechnology. It didn't exist in 1985, and even today, it's in its early stages of development.
I'm not a skeptic any longer.
It's like the best mystery story you've ever read.
And I know the truth.
This perhaps is the one of the most unusual UFO stories that...
I have to believe what I saw.
We're just going to keep pushing. And sooner or later, we're going to push over the apple cart.
How many other people have a piece of a UFO?
All right.
It was so bright.
Sit there and shut this down.
All I saw was this light.
I want, let me play this here.
I believe that I've proven my case. I don't know why I haven't proven it. It's there. I did a sworn affidavit. I passed the polygraph test by a 28-year police veteran. I'm willing to take any other polygraphs that anyone wants me to take. Because you see, I have the truth on my side. And when you tell the truth, you can't get trapped in a lie. This has been a long, hard struggle, trying to give the public something that
belongs to them. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the public. It belongs to the world. The whole world should know about this. Why am I having such a difficult time? Why am I not getting the help that I believe I deserve? You can believe this, what I'm telling you, or you can disbelieve it. I know I've been told by a lot of people that sometimes sleep deprivation will cause you to hallucinate. Perhaps I hallucinated this whole scenario. But I couldn't possibly hallucinate the object. I didn't hallucinate that. There's an old saying that a lie can go halfway around the world, but the truth is just putting on a shoes. And it seems like that's what I'm doing, just putting on my shoes. I don't understand why ufologists haven't beaten a path to my door and say, let me help you. I mean, this is what we're looking for. Let me help you prove that this is what you have. They haven't done that. I've contacted Skeptic Magazine, the people there, Joe Nickel, Philip Klass. I said, here's what I have. If you don't believe I have this, why don't you take a piece of it, analyze it, and disprove what I'm saying? Well, that was, as far as I'm concerned, I issued a challenge. The challenge wasn't accepted. They said they couldn't afford it. They couldn't afford the analysis. And they couldn't afford to come to the museum in Green Spring, Missouri, and see it. In other words, they just weren't interested. That sounds like what I have is too good to be true. And usually when someone has something that's too good to be true, it usually is too good to be true. That's not true in this case. I'll be 72 years old in March. I have an aneurysm in the aorta. I've had 2 heart attacks, stress-related since this. I've been trying to find out what this is. I'm a diabetic. All the members of my family, immediate family, 4 brothers and 1 sister, are all gone. I'm the next to the youngest. And I've lived longer, 10 years longer, as a matter of fact, than any of my siblings. Maybe it's because I have a mission. I don't know why this happened to me. Could have happened to anybody. Why me? Maybe there's a power greater than us that gave me this obligation. I would like to find out what I have before I die. Probably. I won't. Excuse me. A little emotional there. To know that I worked so hard trying to find out what this is, and tell people what you have with sincerity, honesty, and have them say that you're a charlatan and that you're trying to capitalize on other people's fears and beliefs. I'm not trying to do that. I would just like to know what this is. I would like to know if God gave me this as a challenge, knowing that I would pursue it till my dying day. It's been a long, hard struggle. And I believe that some of the help that I've been getting recently.
I think we'll stop it right there. You pretty well got the idea that Bob's trying to let everybody know what's going on. And we'll take some questions. We get running out of time. And I know you have some people out there that want to ask me some questions. Yeah, Bob passed away in 2009. He had 2 heart attacks right after we did the UFO Hunters show, Relics. And he basically gave me the object because he knew he was running out of road. And in August of that year, we got a lockbox together, and I was the primary holder of the lockbox, and Bob was the secondary on it. And a month after that happened, he passed away from a car accident. Now, the car accident was classified as an accident, but I have the car at my house right now, and the car runs fine. It's beat all to heck. I mean, it's been rode hard and beat up, and he was thrown from the car when he had the accident. When I pulled the spare tire off the back of the car, the spare tire was shoved in, a big dent back there. Now, the car ran off the ditch and passenger side and impacted the hill a little bit, and then come back up on the road, flipped on its side, on the driver's side, and spun. There's no way that the rear end of that car could have been dented or shoved in from a normal drive-off ditch type accident. Also, when we set the car back up, the door on the driver's side is shoved in just about bumper high. Now, I can't prove that, but the accident scenario does not fit the damage to the vehicle. And the more I look at that car when it's sitting in my driveway, I still use it. I use it around the house, moving stuff and everything. It runs and drives perfect. You know, there's nothing mechanically wrong with it whatsoever. But I question how he died. And that's basically all I can tell you about that, other than it's just I got reservations about that.
Do you think he was shoved off the road?
I believe he was shoved off the road. I believe that. I can't prove it, and I'm not even going to attempt to prove it. But the damage to the car does not fit the damage. I mean, the accident scenario does not fit the damage to the vehicle. This was right after UFO.
Let's have the questions for the microphone so everybody can hear them.
All right.
Okay, but I think Bob White has been really brave that he really. What would you do if you had something like this? How would you get anybody to listen to you? So he braved all these skeptics. And Larry is carrying on the work. We're going. You have a question?
Oh, fresh off the truck.
Can you come up here? We'll use the microphone up here, then everybody can hear it.
We just got my new book out, just fresh off the UPS truck. So if anybody is interested in seeing anything else that I have, which I did not display on here, it's in the book. I'll be here all weekend downstairs. Anybody has questions, I'll answer anything or show you anything that I have.
Okay, we ready for questions here?
A group of us were up to Reed Spring about, I'd say 8 or 9 years ago, and you had an electromagnetic measuring device, and we had some real anomalies with the electromagnetic radiation device at that time, and when we left, you guys were really puzzled about those readings that you're getting. Are you aware of that, and do you know anything more about that?
Well, if you're talking about this here, you can watch it, the EMF signal coming out of the object right there, and right here. Can anybody, I don't know if you can see that or not. Say, oh. All right. Put the meter down here, set it, green, come right on up to the object, and you watch it start going into orange and red right there. Now there's two signals coming out of the object right now. One's in the high range at 500, or low range at 500 megahertz, and the other one is a range I don't have a meter that will read, but it's definitely putting out a signal. I've never seen a Briggs Stratton do that. At least none of my lawnmowers will do that.
Question? Mine's more of an observation. I come from an aluminum background. And first of all, if I heard it right, Bob said he saw it glowing.
Yes.
Now, aluminum, as soon as it turns solid, does not glow. So
it depends on the elements in it.
No, I understand that, but I'm talking about commercial, available aluminum.
Right, absolutely.
Now, I've been to Marshall, that's a NASA establishment, looking at new alloys, and we were not offered anything like that. It was just minor tweaks to existing specifications. So all I'm doing is offering an observation, and it sounds like if there's some crystalline in there, that could have been what was glowing, but normal commercial alloys.
No, none whatsoever that match, even come close to matching this element list. There's 33 elements in the object. Some of them are the most rare on the planet. They can all be located on the planet, but they're not normally put into an aluminum alloy. As I said, the bombardment of this by cosmic radiation, fast neutron, is the key that says it was outside of Earth's atmosphere and it was formed outside of Earth's atmosphere. Now, who formed it? I can't tell you that. Who made it? What kind of process was used to do it? I can't tell you that. Is it alien? I don't know. But it is extraterrestrial. Now, if it was formed in outer space, above 100,000, 110,000 feet, in a vacuum environment, who made it? That's the question. And that's the answer we're seeking now.
I was just wondering if that was the original shape of the object.
No. The tip was cut off for NIDS. Now, Bob did that himself with a hacksaw. It took him 2.5 hours to cut that little tip off the end of it and broke 2 hacksaw blades doing it. This end was cut at Los Alamos in 1996. You saw that on the DVD of them with him in Los Alamos doing it. Now, we've had SEM Polaroids from their testing at several labs. And what we didn't know in 1996 when we started this, our first test was a basic elemental at TSL Labs in Springfield. When they did that test, there was elongated spirals, again, in that SEM. We didn't know what that was until a scientist at Mesa State explained it to us. The elongated spiral over 5 microns in length is from outer space in a vacuum.
So what frequencies are being emitted?
500 hertz on the one.
500 hertz.
That's a normal that's a normal radio frequency.
Radio frequency.
But the other one is in the upper range. Now, how high up, I don't know, because these meters don't have an actual. It takes a lot higher meter than what I've got.
I have a photograph of when I originally saw it, and it was all intact. And Linda was there. She went out and saw it also. And it was the whole shape before he took it in and had it cut up. Any more questions?
Okay.
But you know, what would you do if something like this happened to you? How would you get anybody to listen to you? If the government, nobody is interested, what would you do?
Yeah, you know, that's the whole thing. When we got involved in this, we figured people would beat the door down. You know, and they beat us up. They didn't beat the door down. You know, we were shunned like.
When you came here, nobody would even go out and look at it.
You know, we came here first, like I say, 1996, and basically we were blowing off. Well, that's the bottom. That's the nice way to say it.
That's why they got a bus and took it all over the United States. For somebody to come and see it. They had the museum. But what else would you do to get somebody to look at it?
Yeah. We came down here with a bus, had it parked out in the parking lot several years. You know, I don't know if Leo appreciated that too much, but we did it. The name of the book I just wrote is that you can only go as far as you push. The Bob White Legacy.
How many other people have things like this, and then they give them to the government to test, and they're never seen again?
Yeah.
Probably a lot of them.
You know, there's something going on. Now, I have one other little bit of information that came in a couple of days ago. I have a scientist doing soil sample testing in Connecticut where this occurrence happened. We picked up soil samples in 03. I was out there in 06 and picked up soil samples, and I was out there. I had a friend at Muthon, Davina Rosinski, pick up soil samples at 09 while we were doing the UFO Hunters show. What happened is we found vitrified soil, which is a type of soil that it takes a high amount of heat, over 2,000 degrees, turns to glass. It's similar to trinitite from the atomic bomb blast in 1945. So that's where the first light that Bob saw was at. And the soil samples, there's glass formations there. I have pictures of it downstairs. People are more than happy to look at it and show you. It don't make sense as far as it being ours. I can think of no technology we have today that's even hints at making this object.
You know, the first time I saw it, I had just an impression. It may not be true, but to me it looked like a waste product that came out of a UFO.
Well, yeah. Well, it's been called, you know. All right. You laugh because the original story we did on that, Bob called it space doo-doo. Yeah, that was exactly what it was named, space doo-doo. The Springfield News Leader.
If it was something to do with the propulsion system, maybe when they took off, the waste product fell.
Right. It's a possibility this could be a fuel cell of some sort, advanced fuel system. It's sending out a signal. It could be a location device of some sort. It could be a signaling device to bring somebody back. It may be sending out. SETI is looking for people out there in La La Land and extraterrestrial land. They're not getting any answers. The answer's probably right there.
It's as good an explanation as any.
You know, maybe the answer's right here. You know, we know it's putting out a signal. Where's the signal going? To who? The more I got, if anybody had told me 20 years ago, I would be standing here on this stage talking about a piece of a UFO, I'd have told them to get off drugs and seek help immediately. Because I'm the biggest skeptic that ever walked this planet. I'm not real sure we landed on the moon.
I got a question.
Or maybe we did, I don't know.
Hi, if I understand you correctly, this is for the understanding.
Can't hear you.
As I understand this, if I understand this correctly, this is putting out a radio frequency signal. Is that correct?
Yeah, EMF, yes, 500 hertz.
As far as I know, I'm not a physicist, but as far as I know, that never occurs naturally. Is that correct?
As far as I know, I've never found it anywhere. Okay. And nobody's ever told me that. Now, there's EMF. The entire room is full of EMF. You know,
Yeah,
your
it's
lights,
man-made.
the microphones, yourself.
But it's all man-made.
You know, well, yeah. Well, no, it's not all man-made. EMF, the signal, X-ray, gamma ray, beta, visible light.
But the source is man-made.
Now, the source right here is coming out of this source
Stars, one or the other.
is where the signals come from is coming out of here. No doubt about it.
As far as I know, there are no materials like this, metal materials or anything else that will emit radio.
No, I don't know of any. You know, I don't know of any. I've never found anybody that. I've said for 17 years, people have told me this is a slag from a slag pile, and it was formed in a factory, a spillage. You can find this sitting underneath a grinding wheel in the shop, in a machine shop. You're not going to find this in a machine shop. I don't know if we can hear this or not. Can you hear that? Aluminum don't ring. It's very porous. This rings. Yeah. And I'm just hitting it with my finger.
You just signal them to come in.
Huh?
You just signal them to come in.
Ending shortly.
I had to redo it. She missed the best part. Anybody else?
You mentioned radio frequency waves. I'm not that familiar with that, but I remember way back when Art Bell had a chunk of something, and they took an implant out of an abductee, and
that was probably one of the Greers.
It had something to do with the radio frequency wave like that, and I was wondering if you thought there was any connection or if you heard that.
I don't know. I'm not familiar with that story. You know, I'm not aware of the story. I know, was it Dr. Greer? Lear or Greer or something like that. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. Has done a lot of implant research. Now, he may know something more that I don't. I don't know, what do you say? The thing speaks for itself. Anybody that knows anything about metals knows this is 85% aluminum by all tests. It's got a high silicon content, which is highly unusual. It's got 33 rare earth elements in it, identified so far. A normal aluminum alloy only has 9, 11 at the max. One of the main ingredients in an aluminum alloy is tin. There's no tin in this. It has never been identified. So that pretty well eliminates an Earth's man-made object right there. The second question you got to ask yourself, if this was manufactured here in an aluminum plant, who would have 33 elements in-house to build this? Yet it can't be identified. Like I say, some of the stuff's the most rare that you can find. Europium, gallium, gadolinium, strontium, titanium, and the list goes on. I don't know what else to tell you. You know, you can make your own choices. You can take the evidence as you see it, as I presented it, as Bob presented it. He passed 4 polygraph tests to what he saw and how he got this thing. And I've continued what he started or what we started together, and I'm going to keep on pushing. I have one other point I want to make. I had a scientist dealing with soil samples right now in Connecticut. Got an email from him yesterday. The soil samples that he's collected, that we collected, I sent to him, 03, 06, and 09, had the same rate of decay as the Fukushima meltdown in Japan during the tsunami. the decay rates match. So we may have by accident discovered that this is a nuclear waste dump out there too. You know, that's just a side note. And it's been, the contamination out there, it shouldn't be there in that soil sample, other than the vitrified soil from the light.
Moving away from the physical to the metaphysical.
Okay.
And after reading, I think almost all of your books, I've come to think that really there's no coincidence. So it sounded like from Bob's description, like this object was kind of like thrown out at him in his direction.
He thought that.
It dropped, but it didn't.
It didn't drop. It was propelled.
It was propelled towards him.
It had to be propelled because if it had dropped 100 miles away from him.
Right, and he wouldn't have been able to find
He never
it.
found
So it was propelled to him, and it left a trail so that he could find it.
We know that the object was in a molten state, in a vacuum environment, forced or ejected from some process into an extremely cold situation, and propelled back to the planet. It had solidified instantaneously from the cold on the outside. That's where the chads formed, or the layering effect on it. The object inside is solid. Now, again, knowing aluminum and what you can and can't do with it, when aluminum melts in an oxygen environment, it's always rounded on the edges. You can never get a sharp edge like it's on this object. This has real sharp edges, and it's feathered out. If this had been in an oxygen environment, those chads would not be there. They would be rolled over, melted.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is, I mean, did he wonder why this came to him? I mean,
He was just at the wrong place at the wrong time, or the right place at the wrong time. You know, he don't know. He didn't know.
Did he ever do like a hypnosis or anything to find out?
No, he never did any regression or hypnosis. He did hallucinate it. You heard that, you know, but he couldn't hallucinate the object.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
No, I know you're trying to think, was it directed for him to find it? You know? But, you know, when it hit the ground, it would have been buried.
Well,
nobody else would have even seen it.
If it had been, if it hadn't hit the hillside, if it hadn't been a hillside, it would have buried. Now, Robert St. John, Tim Everett shot a video in 1995.
But if he hadn't seen it, it would have just stayed in the ground.
Right. Tim Everett shot video in 1995 of a long tubular light in the air over Salida, Colorado. Robert St. John saw the same craft 200 miles south. He's a radio DJ, and he's saying the object propel objects into the side of the mountain. Actually witnessed this. Now, we got the same object, same style of object, in the same area as Bob's encounter, in the daylight, and witnesses see objects propelled out of it.
I was wondering how many others have fallen off of craft and nobody even knows.
That's another thing my scientist has said to me. He said, I think the area has been bombarded by neutron radiation more than one time. And he says, I think what happened to Bob has happened more than once, possibly multiple times. Now, this is a mainstream scientist that is not into UFOs. This guy does work for the government. He does work for cave management. They do soil sample tests, that type of thing. So when you're talking to mainstream scientists, as this guy's credentials, his name is Peter Fabrilio, by the way. I say names. I don't cover stuff up. I put it out there. You know, if you tell me something and you give me your name, I won't tell you and everybody else who your name is. And you told me that. And he's telling me this 2 days ago or 3 days ago. You know, like he's in constant contact with me.
Okay, Larry, this could be the last question.
Okay.
Yeah, prior to Dolores saying the comment about, the fuel, there has to be a fuel and a source.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever that happens, basically there was a guy named Roger Billings who developed the hydrogen engine. I met him personally.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the air that was coming out, the exhaust, like carbon, when you know how you can get chunks of carbon coming out of a gas, this is the exact same thing, but with a spacecraft. And what it is possibly the alien UFO is collecting radiation and negative radiums and things like that out of the air or atmosphere or water or this or that, and converts it. And instead of the pollution being out there, they're using the pollution. They are leaving a small amount of burn pollution as a result. But they have to get energy from somewhere. So by collecting it massively, and they conduce it and leave it in that form.
Just one problem with that scenario. There's one problem with that scenario. You're dealing with a man-made object in aluminum. You do not find aluminum outside of Earth's atmosphere. You do not find aluminum in planets, meteorites, asteroids. There's no naturally occurring aluminum anywhere. So there goes. Where'd they get the aluminum if they didn't? What's going on? Where's the aluminum come from to start with? It's a manufactured object. And I'm running out of time, and thank you all very much. I appreciate it.